Tesla and Lululemon, famous for electric cars and yoga leggings, respectively. They're just two of the companies best positioned to thrive after the pandemic. That's according to a report on future readiness by the Institute for Management Development. Well, Howard Yu is the report's author, and he joins us now from Switzerland. Thank you very much indeed, Howard. So,
Great to be back.
What are Lululemon and Tesla doing right then?
Right. The way we measure this is really looking at how much these companies are becoming future ready. So if you're thinking about consumer brands such as Lululemon or Nike, what they have built up over the years is really a direct-to-consumer relationship, omni-channel, and direct brand projection, rather than relying on third-party resellers. So these are capabilities we call of the future. And if you're thinking about Tesla, obviously it's not just about building an EV. Any company can do so. But it's really this mastery on electronic chipset as well as software that define the future of automotive. So what we're trying to do is to really identify which companies are most ready for the future. Not just during the pandemic as crisis time, but really capitalize the maximum growth going forward.
You mentioned Nike there. What other companies were you looking at, and what do you really mean by future ready?
So here we have a really specific definition around becoming future ready. So as I said, on automotive sector, it's really about this de-emphasis of historic know-how on mechanical engineering, but more around software, electric drivetrain, and increasingly, of course, its electronic component part. And so if you're thinking about finance, it's also about the emphasis of retail branch. No one's going to bank these days, but in fact, it's around mobile service, mobile payment, AI, robot advisory, and so on. Every sector, you can identify key element to win in the future. So this is what we measure. And specifically to your question, beside Lululemon and Nike, in the consumer space, for instance, we saw you don't need to digitize to win sometimes. You think about luxurious fashion goods brand like Hermes and Louis Vuitton. They don't need to digitize too much, but they have to learn about new skills.
Howard, what do you think the main lessons or takeaways are for companies following the pandemic?
Well, it turns out in the pandemic, being future ready is a source of resilience. Back in 2019, we could have calculated, and we did, looking back into history, and we calculated how much these companies are future ready before the pandemic hit. Those already future ready, during the pandemic, they simply performed better than a peer group in terms of share price performance, revenue, etc. And today, as we are going into the beyond pandemic era, those are the companies who stand much better chance to win going forward. So that is something that we observe across the dimension. And the pressure to become future ready simply get accelerated because of the crisis that we went through.
So some pretty big names in your study. What interesting or surprising things did you find, and which brands did not do so well?
Well, if you're looking at the IT sector, technology sector, turns out Intel is doing really relatively poorly, considering the importance they have in the global semiconductor sector. And the US, of course, the White House is looking at Intel to really getting their supply chain in terms of semiconductor to become independent. But they are really a sick man in the IT sector. So I think there is a disjoint between political rhetoric as well as business reality. Look, the fundamental issue here, TSMC and Samsung are so much more ahead and advanced when it comes down to chipset fabrication, and relying on Intel to become, independent in the global supply chain is simply no longer tenable.
Howard Yu, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.